The first thing you want to do once you've chosen which variables you're going to use is to delete the second row. In theory, you could delete the first row, but the way that Jasp is going to work, it's going to pull in your top row as your column headers. And if there's spaces and marks like this in your column headers, that can cause problems. And we can also have, we can only have one row of column headers. This tends to be in a lot of types of files that you can do. Now, I'm going to make a copy here, just so that I don't mess up the original. In your case, you won't be able to edit the original, so you'll have to make a copy. The other thing you could do, if this doesn't work for you, if it takes too long, you could also go to File, Download as CSV. And then you can make your edits in Excel if you have Excel or a similar spreadsheet program. Okay, so I have this here. I'm going to take that second row out and delete that row. And then I'm going to do basically what I just told you. I'm going to download as a CSV. The difference is now, even if I don't have a program like Excel, this process will work. I never actually have to open this file. I just have to save it to my computer, and then I can open it through Jasp. I do want to make sure I notice the name, copy of the L's here, so that I can pull it up in Jasp. So let me open up Jasp here. Okay, so once I get into Jasp, I'm going to go to my computer to open a file. Let me browse, and here's where I need to know where it is. Okay, and this is great. I want that first row to be column headers, and starting with the second row, I want all of this to be data. In Jasp, this is where the data is located. This is where the output will come once we start having some output. Now, we could just go straight in and run a regression. The problem is there's a lot of missing data in here that's going to give us problems. And so what we need to do is get that missing data under control first. To do that, you're going to have to go variable by variable and make note of what the missing variable codes are. So, for example, -4 is one, -9 is one. You don't have to go through every variable, but just the ones that you're going to use. So let me see right here. So I'm going to use, basically I'm going to predict how likely a student is to help with volunteering or other socially compassionate outcomes. That's my outcome variable, right? And since I deleted that, I also need to go back to my copy to figure out what that variable name is. So volunteer to help, that's F3D41J right here. And notice that it has these missing values, -9, -8, -7, -4, and -3. Okay, and we can't actually code them as missing right here, as far as I know, that I've figured out in Jasp so far. But do make note of those. I'm also going to look at, let's see, this is a math reading score. It's not going to let me go in there and check specifically, but what I can go is do a descriptive statistics, and I can go to that variable, math, and it will give me the min and the max. I can see that that min is -8, which would be a missing value. The max would be a legitimate score there. So you're going to go through variable by variable, try to figure out what the missing variables are. You can also use the codebook, would be a very helpful way to figure out what data is missing. Once you get that all, you want to go up to the top right here and go to Preferences. And in the import data section, we can add some codes for missing data. So notice that my missing, whoops, okay, so notice that changed those values to missing. That was good. That's what I wanted. However, I wanted to add several of them. So -8, I'm going to add, -7, I'm going to add, -4, I'm going to add, and -3. These were all ones that came up for that volunteering variable. So I'm going to click OK. That's going to change a lot of the variables to missing. Notice that in this particular variable here, we have 305 missing variables on their math test score. But I do notice now that my minimum is 19, my max is 86, both of which are reasonable scores. And if I would go to the codebook, it would tell me that that's the range of actual values I should have. But I want to double check that for everything I'm going to use. So I am going to go descriptive and check the other variables. So I'm going to be using the reading score also. Let me drag that over here. And as soon as I drag, this is a great feature of Jasp. As soon as I drag it into this box, I can see what I'm looking at here. So also 305 missing, probably the same students, and a reasonable min-max. I'm looking at base year SES, which is usually pretty good, and we do have some missing there. Min -2.1, max. When you see a negative and then there's some decimal points, that's typically a valid value. What it is a z-score. So roughly half of the values should be negative, meaning that they're below average, and the positive values there would be above average on that indicator, in this case, socioeconomic status. So all of these, it looks like I've controlled for all the missing variables based on my min and max right there. And I'm going to go to well, let me show you this. This one's an interesting one. It's number of sports. Notice here that my min is 0, so playing 0 sports in high school is reasonable. My max is 99, which is not reasonable. So what I'm going to do, that turns out that's a interesting way that they code the missing variable in the sports. Once I hit OK there, now I'm going from 0 to 7. So we do have students in the database who played 7 different sports in high school. But this is a reasonable range now. And I finally wanted to use, well, let me use those 4. I think that's a good range. So what I've done now is I've cleaned my data so that my missing data will not run as part of the analysis. If I don't do this, the entire analysis is void. It'll give me output, which will be completely useless. So it's crucial that you first identify and code those missing variables. Then you're going to go to regression, linear regression. And here my dependent is that outcome variable, that F3D41J. If you find a way to rename those variables, I guess you could do it way back in the beginning when you're dealing with the Google Sheets or the CSV file, so that it pulled in as a name you would recognize. But if you don't, you'll just have to kind of go back and forth until you know which variables you're working with. I know that this variable is my math standardized test. This is my reading standardized test. This is my socioeconomic status. Notice the regression is updating as I do this, but I'm specifically not going to take a look here until I get everything in. I wanted one more by the number of sports. Okay. Yeah, and this is also, so this little symbol means these are reading as quantitative variables. By number sport currently is a categorical variable. I don't think that'll matter, but I do want to keep an eye out for that just in case. Sometimes it won't let you do certain things if you label a variable categorical. So you'd have to click in on this and then you can change the type of variable that it is. So I think I have everything. I really should add weights because certain students were more likely to be sampled than others. For example, Hispanic students, Native American students were oversampled in this sample, meaning that a given, say, white male, any random given white male across the country would have been less likely to have been chosen than, say, a Native American student in his or her classroom. And that's just, it allows us more statistical power so we can do analyses. So with all of that, you should get an output, linear regression output. And let me see, if we click on this, we can copy that to a clipboard. And let me see. Okay, so I was hoping I could just cut and paste that into the spreadsheets. You can't paste into a Google Sheets as far as I know. You could paste somewhere else, save it as an image, and import it, which is essentially what I'm going to do. So I used my snipping tool here. You can Google how to take a screenshot on your computer. I'm going to save that. Notice I'm going to be in Documents here as regression output, and that way when I come back to my Sheets file then, so this should be in your Make a Special tab in the spreadsheet that I've shared with you for this assignment, and you would import an image. Ooh, looks like you have could have done it even fancier than I did there. And I'm looking for my regression output. Okay, that puts it in here. Not the snazziest way to do it, but this at least gives me a sense of where you got it. And you know what? Actually, please include your descriptives there too. So you may need to even run back and grab the descriptives of everything you did. So in my case, it was this one, the math, the reading, the number of sports, and the volunteer variable here. And so when you have that descriptives, also just grab a screenshot of that so that I can see your descriptives. So you'll save that, save it as capture, and then you can insert that also. And again, it looks like, well, let's try this out. I'm just kind of curious what this will do. Let's take a snapshot. Okay, that's going to be tricky. Okay, and that was called capture. Okay, that puts it in there. So those are the two things that I want to see. The descriptives that includes all the variables used and the output. And in the next video, we can talk a little bit about what this output means.